try and knock off IR 84 2 days ago Monday. It's now Wednesday. Got IR 85 tonight. Great group of people here. Mostly first timers, well really all of them, because they've only done one before at other places that don't never really count. When you've just done one, you need to do a week really to be first timers in my view. One ceremony doesn't really tell you anything, I can't imagine, but who knows. I mean, yeah, it's an experience, but depending on how it's done and where, you don't get a chance to sort of take it further. But anyway, that's not important. Amazing ceremony, very weird. We've got a lovely girl here from Ukraine who, most powerful energies I've ever seen. Ceremony started off pretty well. I had a 3/4 of a cup, full cup, just whatever Maestro gave me. Struggled a lot with cleaning after 2 weeks in Iquitos and shit food. That paid the price for that. Everyone else just had, minimal, 25%, something like that. The Maestro gave them all to see where they are. And just as well. Everyone handled it really well except this one poor girl. I can't think of her name yet. Ina. I haven't learned everybody's name yet, really. She's just out of the blue. Everything was pretty quiet. Out of the blue, she just got up and asked for help. She knocked on the floor. It wasn't heard first time. She banged louder, and then got taken out to the toilets. And I could hear her talking a lot, and she didn't come back for a while. I'm by the door as usual. I came up pretty quick because what happened was, as soon as she walked past my feet, I got this massive burst of fear and anxiety, and I thought, that's unusual. But it's 2 weeks away. I thought, shit, is that me? But only what happened later, I realised it was probably her triggering my ayahuasca, and me feeling what's going on with her, because the fear was off the scale. Just instantly hit, really powerful. And then what developed then was a bit later on. She asked to go to her room. She wasn't talking outside. Gino was covering for a lady because she was late coming because of her own reason. And so it was Christian and Gino were guarding, and they took her to her room. Maestro carried on singing, but then later on, I'd more or less completely forgotten about her, lost in my own sort of trip, and then what appeared to me and Jamie, this horrendous screaming started, and I thought it was a mad woman or an attack, a shamanic attack, maybe controlling somebody, because somebody to us it sounded like the person was out in the jungle towards the path that goes off to the other village. Which is a good 20 minutes away, and I'm thinking, what's somebody doing out there? This screaming and then talking, and I thought, is that like someone? I thought it was a domestic fight, like some guy beating up his wife or something. It was bizarre, but these screams were horrendous, and they had this harmonic overtone to me on ayahuasca, like a 2 layers of pitch shifting. The similar sound to the way the Wraith Kings in Lord of the Rings, they're creatures that they ride, scream. It had that same kind of overtones. It was fucking horrible. And I thought, what the fuck is that? This is demons being sent to harass the ceremony. And they were moving around, like they covered short distances as it appeared, like 100 meters 1 minute through from a distance. But of course, it's really difficult to judge sound on ayahuasca because it's so, the audible hallucinations and stuff, and whether you're getting a spiritual idea of what the demon aspect of the screams are coming from. That's really the demon inside. It was fucking horrendous. It's the strongest demon I've ever heard, and this was drowning out Maestro's Icaros. And he was trying to sing louder over them, but you could still, I was focused right on this demon. thinking this is super powerful, whatever the fuck this is. And I hadn't made an association toward the girl in the room. She's four rooms down from me. So it was crazy. And then I thought these screams that they were monkeys, like possessed monkeys or something. I didn't know, thinking it was a shamanic attack. Just didn't know what was going on. Trying to make sense of it, tripping off my own head, but very aware that like the demonic component, that was what I was hearing. It was no way that any human being could sound like this, and why would they be in such torment, screaming like a banshee, and talking and screaming and talking louder, and then eventually Gino came back in. They'd spent, and I still hadn't put the pieces together because both Gino and Christian were out the room at this point. And then a strange thing happened. I got dropped completely out of my trip, and I was wondering, with this screaming going on, how it was, be frightening for the other guests on there. Most of them, all of them really, first timers. And I was kind of thought maybe I've been dropped out of this trip. There's only me and Maestro in the Maloka now, maybe to help out, And so at one point I actually got up, and it was a bit wobbly, but I could function, and it was a bit of light coming through the window, so to see where I was. So I actually got up, and while Gino and Christian were out of the room, I walked around and blew Mapacho over everybody while Maestro was singing. But then it calmed down for a bit, and then I went back to my bed, and I was out of tripping at this point. It was like, oh well, I kind of lost it now. I'm thinking, I'll probably do a little bit of a second cut and get back up there. But it never happened. We never got the offer, because then the screaming started again, and then this time Gino or Christian came back in, whispered something to Maestro, and luckily I've recorded the whole of this ceremony on my phone, because that's what I'm doing now to learn the Icaros. Sent it to Maestro and everything, and so I can make this available so people can hear. When Maestro went out of the room, he wasn't singing then, and she was still screaming. And of course I'm still thinking that this person is out in the jungle, because that's where it sounded like it was coming from. And I was thinking he's walked all the way round to the jungle to try and confront this person and try and exorcise them. It was really fucking weird. But of course it wasn't. In reality, it turned out it was one of the guests back in her room. And later on, Maestro told me when the ceremony was over, I was talking to Maestro. I kept fainted twice talking to him, and I felt so weak because I got a resurgence after the Aya dropped off. When he was singing Icaros a bit later on, after he'd gone out and dealt with this situation, he was gone maybe 10 minutes. I'll have to check the recording, but you can hear her still screaming and ranting. But Maestro told me later, after the ceremony was finished, I was just talking to him, then kind of collapsed. I fainted twice, and I was on the floor going, what the fuck happened? And then he was like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I started chatting again, saying, oh yeah, anyway, this was interesting about this. And he was telling me that he was literally just pulling out this energy out of her head. So it was really, really super strong. And of course, probably really disconcerting, but we were more concerned because what I did, I still hadn't twigged the next day, because she was calmed down by then a bit later, but I still hadn't twigged it was her by the next day. And when we were sitting there at breakfast, I knew she'd gone out early and just maybe it must have been pretty bad for her not to come back in and be taken to her room because she asked. And then I said, to everybody, I said, you did really well last night. I mean, obviously it must have been really disconcerting, especially with the screaming going on. And then, of course, she was next to me at the breakfast table, and she said, that was me. And I still hadn't twigged, and I sort of went, oh no, I'm talking about something else. And Jamie told me later when we had a chat, he had the same assumption as me, that it was something else, some other woman out from his perspective, first time on ayahuasca, hearing something out in the jungle, because it didn't sound like it was coming as close as the rooms. So anyway, it was weird. But I personally think that the projections that demons and spirits can do, it makes the sound come from that direction. And we were hearing, on ayahuasca, we were hearing the spiritual component of those demons. Because at one point, when Maestro had gone, I actually heard when he must have dispelled a big chunk of them, I actually heard these two final screams really, really faint with reverb. Just being, it's like they'd been expelled and they were just being shot, meters, hundreds of meters away, banished into the jungle. And after that, things calmed down. Not immediately. He came back in and started singing Icaros again, and then eventually there was still a bit of shouting after that, but very quiet. But then the next day, the small group was sat out on the benches outside my room, and I came out I could hear them talking, and I thought she might be there because I wanted to just see how she was doing. And she was sat there, and I got a drink of water, and I said, "Do you mind if I sit next to you?" And there was the space there, and just said, "How are you? How are you doing?" I said, had a rough time, but I'd spoken to Gino by then, and we'd realised that it was actually her. And she'd been through a lot. She was very pensive the next day. As you can imagine, trying to process what she'd gone through. So I didn't broach it the next day at breakfast or lunch. But in the afternoon, I sat next to her and I said, you went through a lot last night. And I said, look, if you want to talk about anything, just feel free. And she said, thank you. And then I looked, she had her knees up. She was wearing shorts with her knees up, with her arms around her knees, and she had bruises all over her knees, these brown bruises on both knees. I said, where'd you get that? How'd you get your bruises? And she said, I did it to myself last night. She said, I trashed the room. I said, I'm very sorry for that. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, it wasn't your fault. Because obviously, but I didn't left it at that. I wasn't going to, because I don't know what she feels about it or what she might know or what her beliefs are. But fuck, man, she had one serious fucking demon or demons on board. That's for sure. But today, she's a lot brighter right from this morning. Everyone's been really supportive toward her. Gino came in last night at dinner and said, look, everybody's aware of, obviously, during the ceremony, but everyone's really supportive of you. And because I'd said to her, when she said that was me screaming and I thought it wasn't, I said, well, the disturbance, I said, I hope it doesn't put you off, about continuing. And she was just quiet. She just sort of, at the time, said, we'll see. But today she's a lot better, and other people have spoken to her. She said that, she's just a lot more. She gets on really well with the other guy from Kazakhstan, because I suppose Ukrainian, they can speak Russian together or whatever. And so they get on really well, and he's very buoyant, full of beans, really nice lad. He had a lovely experience on the first ceremony. He got a taste of Mumra's heaven, but without the visuals, but he was ecstatic, he was laughing like I was. In my sort of highs a couple of weeks ago, he was laughing sort of hysterically, and toward the end, which was nice, it didn't disrupt too much. But he was chatty a lot, and then he giving everybody hugs at the end, going, wow, it's just all about love. And so, but he didn't see it in visions, he just felt it. He felt ecstatic, and they were all really high. They were sort of out walking around. It's almost like a little party atmosphere the first time I've ever come across that. Normally people are just laid out and feel rough and want to get back to their rooms and vomit or just lie down. But this lot, there was a few of them, and all very buoyant for a while, not too long, and then it rained, so they all came. They've been walking around a bit on the planks and on the grass, just enjoying sort of the ayahuasca high, because they hadn't had much, so it tailed off for them by the end. They'd only had a third of a cup. I think a couple had a little more. Girl from Sydney, from Australia, she's Chinese, she's lovely. I had a good chat with her today. She came in the local and I was in there, and just had a bit of chat. She spoke to Josh for ages. Josh was haranguing them for his usual hour, like he does with his ideas and whatnot. So they're a really nice group. I said, but that was the most extreme levels of energy I've ever seen in anybody. That level. Gino told me today that there was another woman a few months ago that was worse, slightly worse than her, but she was screaming actually in the Maloka until Maestro started the process of, extraction. So I'm due for my shaman chat. With so many of us, it's spread across 2 days today, and I still haven't come from in. There's only meant to be 3, and I still haven't gone in. But of course, I'm just more curious about how much was actually removed from her, and if there's any left, and so. But Gino said he's already discussed it with Maestro that she's only going to have a real tiny amount of ayahuasca tonight, to see where she is, so that, and I said, so that at least Maestro and then the Icaros can extract the rest of it if it's what's left, without it having a really powerful effect on her with that loss of control. And of course the demon, knowing that expulsion's pending, that's what they do. They don't want to be exorcised, and if they're really powerful, like hers obviously was, they'll create mayhem in that body and cause all this type of crazy behavior to try and stop the process and save themselves, as we've seen as I spoke about in my book, my first two ceremonies with Bianca at Capitari with Jack. They just cause they take over the mind of the person and cause a fuss to get the ceremony stopped or get them removed from it in some way. So it was incredible. So it'd be really interesting tonight. It's about 4 o'clock now. We've got a few hours, 3 or 4 hours, and we'll be going. What time is it? Right, it's 20 past 4. So we've got 2.5 hours, 3 hours, 8 o'clock. So 3.5 hours before ceremony. So at least that's that done anyway, and it's short, but absolutely incredible. I sent the video. Because I'm recording all of them now, because I'm learning Maestro's Icaros, or I'm very familiar with them, most of them now after 2 weeks in Iquitos listening to them. So I've got I've got 4 now, 4 recordings with different ceremonies, and most of them are actually the same. He does pretty much the same repertoire. He called Papa Julio again last night to help, because I think that was required, because when he came back in to start singing for us, obviously he didn't want to leave the group too long, and she was still screaming, but he'd called Papa Julio by that point, and I reckon Papa Julio was probably over there sorting it out, no problem. When you've got another shaman spirit to call on, it's just amazing. So Maestro said he pulled quite a bit out of her head, like probably like he's like pulling a root out. He said energy, pulling that out. So but I haven't spoken to him about the details yet. I haven't had a chance. So it'll be interesting to find out a bit more. Hopefully this is Lady coming for me and I can go and get my chat done.